So you think you found the right person to marry. Well, what's next? Okay, in this section, we're going to ask this question. How do you prepare for marriage?
Financial management. Who's the biggest spender? Who's the biggest saver? Do you know about each other's debt history? You know, what about savings? What about investments? What about budgeting? I mean, you know, let's think about financial management issues.
The first big issue, I guess, it would be money.
Make sure you both agree on having children. The way they prefer raising kids.
Later on, there's more than a relationship. There's kids, there's school.
Really considering long-term things like what their careers are and stuff.
Let's think about physical intimacy issues. You know, 3/4 of women have had some physical trauma issue.
We need to know family history. That's important.
Meeting the family, of course.
Their past, because the past does become the future, and your past will come back to haunt you.
Are you trying to be abstinent? Are you having struggles with that?
Having sex before we were married, that was a hard thing for me, and I always felt guilty.
Hanging out with friends of the fiance or whatever. Stay engaged a long time.
When we're courting, we're going all out. We're bringing flowers, we're saying nice things, we're opening the door, we're cooking, we're doing all these wonderful things. And then when we get married, for some reason we shift into some other kind of mental picture. The wife may have an image of a husband that mirrors her father. The man may have an image of a wife as his mother or some other woman. But when they're courting, they don't talk about those things. They're just mental images. But as soon as you get married, you shift into mental picture time, and you expect everything to kind of go that way. But it's never going to happen that way. So you need to have a little reality check before you get married and talk about issues. The good thing about premarital preparation is that it exposes the mental pictures.
You should be sitting down with a mentor or someone.
Why would you get engaged in the first place if you gotta go premarital counseling?
Just get somebody else to shine different perspectives on your relationship.
People think that they have so many things in common, and then it turns out that that actually isn't the case.
Then when you finally really take that step, then it's, you know, it's like too late.
There are certain myths in our culture, and one of the myths is they live happily ever after, okay? And that's just the way it should be.
The movies nowadays and TVs, they can display marriage as being, it's always like at the end of the movie, and then they get married, like that's the climax and everything is going to be perfect from there on out.
Here's the problem. And the couple says, "You mean we have to work at this? I thought fairy tales came true. I thought you got married and you lived happily ever after." Not so. When someone wants to drive a car, they need to pass a written test and they need to pass a road test. When someone wants to get married, they just have to pass a blood test. And in certain states, they don't even need to do that. So there you are embarking on the most important mission of your life, and there are no instructions. And you say, well, I'll just make it up. Or I saw it my parents, and well, oh, okay, they ended in divorce. I'll just do the opposite. Well, that's not good enough. You need some guidelines. You need to seek counsel, whether that's from books or other people or from marriage programs.
On the next page, on 166, what effect has confusion about the roles had on marriages today?
We started a program that really takes couples through what we like to call 24 hours of preparation. And the concept is that when a couple says, we'd like to get married at BlackRock, what is our next step to helping them in that process? And we will say to a couple, we'd love to marry you here at BlackRock, but in order to do that, we require of you 24 hours of preparation. And immediately their reaction is, are you crazy? 24 hours? How can I possibly give up 24 hours of my time? We proceed to ask them the question, well, how long does it take you to actually plan your wedding day? And they begin to think about that, and they talk about the months and sometimes years that it takes to actually plan the actual wedding day. So the next logical question is, well, how long do you think it would take you to plan for a lifetime of marriage together? And then they look at me and they say, well, I guess 24 hours we can do.
Which of the following characters best describes, in your view, how husbands are portrayed today? All right.
Look at The Simpsons. Homer Simpson is just a classic adult, and Marge figures everything out.
The class allowed us all to really talk openly about how marriage would change the relationship, what expectations would look like.
I mean, so many things we just never thought about, like roles in the household and kids and...
We talked about a lot of things, but they asked, I mean,
They're very
even just to think
specific.
about, have you talked about having kids? If so, how many kids? When do you want to have those kids? Who's going to discipline them?
How would you talk together about finances, given what you know?
We've got to take time to communicate the things that are important, and certainly finances, as we've learned from the questionnaire, can be a kind of a sticky point for a lot of couples.
You have to communicate. You have to make that time for each other, despite how many stressors there are in our lives. You know, if we don't make the time for each other, it's going to impact so many different things.
They bring up a lot of things that you don't think about really when you're still in that first in love stage, that I think cause a lot of marriages to break down. So it was good. We kind of had a head start.
We did sign the contract of abstinence, and that was hard, but it was worth it.
Having sex had us avoid things, topics that were uncomfortable. It made us not, work through things more and just fall back on having sex.
We had a problem with roles, and because we didn't discuss it. We fought for about 3 years.
We match a couple that was interested in being married with a marriage mentor couple, in which case they would walk through a premarital inventory, such as focus, and then they would walk through the results of that inventory with each of the couples.
The questionnaire with the mentor program brought out some of our bad habits, so to speak. So, it didn't fix them all. And I still have bad habits, and I, can certainly get tired and cranky and stubborn, but we've discussed it, and I'm quicker to recognize, my faults, so to speak.
The inventory takes approximately 30 to 40 minutes to complete, at which time the inventory is sent off to be scored electronically, and then when the results return, the mentor couple actually have some really incredible individual assessment of this couple, and what they can do with that is just amazing.
By the time I get there, you don't really talk to me at all, so I kind of...
You ask the questions that they fill out the first evening, and either they agree or they disagree, or they're undecided. And if one agrees and one disagrees, then they discuss it between each other with the mentor couple present. The next question that you guys had a difference in is, at times I'm concerned about the silent treatment I get from my future spouse.
I think I agree.
You agree?
We agree.
You agree.
When we have a disagreement, I want to deal with it right there and talk about it and get it over with. And you don't.
No, I do. I tend to just clam up, I think, and I like to think or hope that the problem will just go away or resolve itself, so I could work on that.
I remember our mentor saying, it's not so much that you disagree with each other about something in particular, but the real issue is how are you going to resolve that?
Surprisingly enough, we have seen in the last 3.5 years approximately 30% of all the couples that have come through our program, which right now totals close to 75 couples, 30% of those couples have actually decided not to get married. Now we would look at that as saving a marriage.
Key questions to talk about before marrying someone include financial issues such as budgeting, past debt, and use of credit cards. Family history, including family patterns of conflict, discipline, and affection. Past history of being physically or sexually abused. Whether to have children and how many. ideas about how to parent and discipline children, religious beliefs and what faith, if any, to raise children in, who works, who raises the children, and whether to have sex or to abstain before marriage. Relationships may change after the romance period due to unconscious mental pictures and expectations of what a husband or wife should be, often based on what your father or mother was like. A premarital inventory is a questionnaire that engaged couples can fill out separately. This is often used in marriage preparation programs to help couples to identify and to deal with issues of disagreement before they get married.